Hey guys, welcome to this module on why niches are so important and how to identify them. Now, depending on what part of the country you're in, it might be niches, so you might know what I'm talking about when I say niche. It's a kind of a funny word. Depending on where you're from, I'm from the East Coast, I always say niches, so bear with me if you call it niches. We can debate that later. But let's dig right in and talk about exactly what is a niche. Maybe you don't fully understand that term. I want to make sure that we definitely define that here really quickly. In this example here, you'll see boating products, which is something Dave actually used to be involved in. And in this case, I want to kind of go over what a niche is and what this niche is specifically, again, in boating, and how these products all relate to each other. So you have something like an anchor, again, a boating anchor, boating line, boating bumpers for the side of your boat, a boat cover, a boat canopy. All of these products work together as one niche and can easily be one brand, versus if you had these 5 products, which would be a coloring book and then like a pet carrier and a garlic press, and then obviously we do have one boating thing in here, a boat cover or a telescope. These are all products that you could easily be very successful with, right? I mean, all 5 of these products are things that sell very well on Amazon or in brick and mortar stores or other marketplaces. These things can do very well, but you're going to have a much more difficult time as a private label seller or someone who's importing products if you're selling all of these disparate products. They're going to come from 5 different manufacturers. You're probably going to have to sell them under 5 different brand names, unless you have something like Generic Co., which again, it doesn't really fit well. It's hard to develop that brand messaging over all these different products rather than having products that work really well together. So we use KFC as an example of somebody that kind of gets this right. KFC's fried chicken. That's what you always think of them as when you hear a KFC commercial. And sure, they sell other things. They sell grilled chicken and they sell some side items like macaroni and cheese or whatever it might be. But their main business, their core focus is fried chicken. You can use other fast food restaurants, the same thing. Something like Domino's Pizza. They're focusing mostly on pizza, and yes, they do sell breadsticks and some chicken wings and some other things that get their average order value up or give people a variety, but their core focus is pizza. And one last example would be something like Taco Bell. I mean, they're focusing on Mexican food. And you think of these companies because of those things, and they don't get involved selling the other people's stuff, not because it isn't tempting, but because they know to develop a niche and a brand and people can resonate with that, they have to focus on what they're good at. So that's why this is really, really important. So I mean, for me, I have 4 different brands, and those brands don't get out of the scope of what they're good at and what their message is. They sell ice packs for our ice wrap company, or coloring products for our coloring company, and we aren't selling paintbrushes with our coloring company, because that isn't coloring, it's painting, and that's even like a bit of a stretch because we probably could nibble at those edges, so that might not be the best example, but you kind of get the idea that you wouldn't want to jump to something completely different like coin collecting or something under that brand. You might nibble, but you don't want to take a big leap. Another really important reason why working within a niche is very important is at these trade shows. I go to the Canton Fair a couple of times a year, and as someone who's been there, it's hard to fully explain the scope of the size of this freaking complex, but it's about 3 times the size of the largest convention center I've ever been to anywhere else in the world. This is the largest convention center in the world anywhere. And if you look at the different color codes on this map and look at the different types of products, you can see here something like sports and casual wear is in one section of the Canton Fair, while something like cases and bags is in another section. So having to walk a mile from one place to the other because you're in all these different disparate products can be quite grueling. And again, as someone who has gotten to the point where they've had to make multiple brands because we filled out a couple of our brands and we're now moving into other ones, I can tell you that this is not a pleasant experience, and you only want to do it if you absolutely have to. And if you're just getting started and you only have 5 products, you're not going to want to have to jump all around the fair to find those 5 products. You'd be better off in 1 or 2 select halls that are focused on those things. So I want to jump into another topic here just real quick, which is consolidating shipments within China. If you look at this map of China, we have it color-coded into different regions, and you'll see here that a lot of different regions in China specialize in one particular or a couple different niches. So something like clothing, for instance, is done in one part of China, while plastics would be done in a completely separate part of China. And if you think of something like Beijing compared to a different section of China like Shenzhen, it's the equivalent of going from like New York to LA. It's a big distance between these different parts of the country, so you are much better off having all of your products coming from one spot. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here later in this presentation. Another thing I want to talk about here is how individual manufacturers typically focus on one thing and do that really well, or maybe two or three things, but they're all going to always be related. So this example we have here is a listing from Alibaba, and it's a marker company. And this is a company that sells different types of markers, whether it's a highlighter or an alcohol marker, or one of the things they say here, it makes me laugh, is an oily marker. These are all markers nonetheless. You'd be much better off selling 5 or 6 or 7 different types of markers from this one company than coming up with 5 or 6 or 7 different completely random other products. So I want to go through 5 main things here real quick. I'm going to hit these at a high level and then we'll dig into each one. 5 benefits here of having a niche versus all these disparate products. 1, becoming an expert in one niche is easier than doing more than one. 2, it's easier to identify customers and upsell them than finding different groups of customers and trying to figure out what to upsell all those different people. 3, consolidating shipping. 4, building a better relationship with your manufacturers. And 5, reducing time to market. So let's dig into each one of these real quick and give you a little bit more detail of each one of those things. So the first reason here, an expert in your field. There's a really great book called Outliers that I love that talks about how in order to be really good at something, you have to spend 10,000 hours or more doing it to become an expert. It's a lot easier to do that with one thing, to be spending 10,000 hours, than if you're doing it over 5 different things. That requires 50,000 hours, which is a long time to become really good at 5 disparate niches. So our recommendation is to pick one niche, become an expert in that field. It's going to go a long way into knowing your customers and knowing what to do with your product. We were using something like luggage earlier as an example. It's easier to become an expert in luggage and understand the types of plastic that you're going to want to use for the outside. Or do you want to use a type of cloth, or the handle mechanism, or the lock to lock it, the wheels that are going to go on it, the different sizes and shapes. What's the TSA recommended or requirements on luggage? There's all these things that you have to learn just for that one little niche. And if you're trying to do that for something different at the same time, it becomes much more difficult. And again, who's someone who actually does have multiple brands, I can tell you from our own experience just how difficult this is. So what we've done is we've developed one niche at a time until we've completely filled it out before getting into these different niches. So become an expert. It's really important. Pick that one niche so you can be really good at it. Number 2, it's a lot easier to upsell somebody something if all the products work together well in one niche. It's easier to sell somebody a carry-on suitcase one day, and then 6 months later when they're going on a different trip, sell them the full-size version, the check baggage version of that, because they already know you. You already have them on your list. You've already marketed to them. They already trust you. They already believe in the quality of your product. And even at the time of the first sale, you might have an opportunity to sell them a bigger suitcase, because maybe they're going on a really big trip and they need a carry-on and a check bag. This is really important to be able to sell the same customer more than one thing at a time. If you're selling one size suitcase and then the other thing you sell is coloring books, it's going to be very difficult to sell those 2 things to one customer. So keep in mind the fact that you can upsell something to somebody. It's really, really important. Number 3 here, consolidating shipping. I am a math guy. I love things in black and white. So we're going to pull up this slide here and talk about real quick how consolidating shipping can save you a ton. And if you aren't careful, very, very quickly, your shipping costs can become your number 1 expense with an importing or private label business. Let's look at this example. Let's say you're importing 25, 50, or 100 widgets from the same manufacturer on the same shipment versus doing 25 widgets from one manufacturer and then another 25 from another manufacturer in a completely different part of China, or doing 4 different shipments from 4 different parts of China and having to do those separately versus consolidating them. Now in this case, let's say that all the products cost the same exact amount. What you'll see here is that linearly, meaning that the first example to the second example is just double because you're ordering double the number of products, and it's 4 times the amount if you're ordering 100 products. Your freight costs go up almost linearly, but what doesn't go up here are all these other, what I just have to say are BS charges. It's crazy how expensive all these ancillary crazy charges extrinsic to just the cost of the shipping are. Your handling charges and your customs duty fees and your trucking fees and all this other stuff. These fees are the same no matter how much you import. You're paying someone to push some paper around, and that fee is going to be the same no matter what the number is on that paper, right? I mean, if you have a 25 on the piece of paper or 100 on a piece of paper, the fees that import that stuff is going to be the same. And what ends up happening when you amortize that cost out over these 3 examples, suddenly your cost of goods landed all in goes from something like $58.99 to do 25 widgets to $50.36 to do 50 widgets, and all the way down to $44.58 if you import 100 widgets. So consolidating shipping is incredibly important, and you want to make sure that you have a niche and products that work well together because of this. Number 4, you can build a better relationship with suppliers. Think about people in your own life. Somebody that, a customer that you're working with already that comes to you and orders over and over and over again, and the bigger orders that they are, the more you're going to care about that relationship. It's just human nature. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It's just human nature. So if you are working within a niche and you're working with one manufacturer, if you can, to order all the stuff in their catalog that can work well within your brand, that relationship to that manufacturer is going to be way more important than if you're jumping from manufacturer to manufacturer to fill out your catalog. So this is a very important component to importing and why niches are important. The 5th one here, reducing time to market. One of the most cliche sayings in the world is that time is money. I even have a shirt that literally says time is money. It's a cute little shirt with a clock on it, and it kind of conveys the point, time is money. Time is really money in importing. When you put down a deposit on an order, that 30% deposit, they have locked up that money for however long it takes to develop that product. Or if you're eyeing a product and you're going to develop it, you have to put money aside to be able to develop that product. Even if they don't have your money, you still can't spend it. So while that money is locked up, there is a time cost of money. Whether you're paying interest on it or not, them having your money costs you money. And then there's also the extrapolated opportunity cost. So every minute that you don't have the product in your hand, the opportunity cost of being able to develop another product is real. And if you extrapolate that over a long period of time, it actually becomes exponential, very much so like compounded interest when saving. So being able to have a relationship with one manufacturer, being in a niche, is going to reduce your time to market as you're developing more and more products rather than having to learn about all these different things. It's going to make your importing life way, way easier. So that is the end of this module. Just as a reminder, you can always email students@ecomcrew.com. As a student of this course, you have access to Dave and I for any questions you might have. We hope you guys found this information valuable. So until the next module, happy selling, and we'll talk to you soon.